In 1940, the City of Richmond annexed 10 square miles of Henrico County.
It was sort of like an ink blotter effect. Imagine ink is put here, and as the area grows around the city in terms of population and so forth, then the idea was for the city to keep expanding.
In the 2 decades that followed, the little bedroom community known as Henrico County began to shape its own identity. And when the City of Richmond decided once again that they needed to expand, things had changed.
I think they felt that they had a good case, but they knew that the county was going to resist, as it should have done, and certainly to protect its own interests and to protect its citizens, most of whom did not want to be annexed.
In 1959, there were just over 107,000 residents in Henrico County. By 1965, that number had increased by nearly 40,000. Nationwide, urban flight was on the rise as people flocked to neighboring counties. As a result, Virginia's cities began to look across their borders for much-needed tax relief.
Virginia has a very unique situation in terms of local government. It's the only state in the nation that provides for what we call the separation of cities and counties. It goes all the way back to a court decision made by Virginia's Supreme Court at the outset of the 20th century, early 1900s, where the court, in a rather lengthy opinion, said basically those who live in urban areas, citizens who live in urban areas and therefore require more services in terms of police, streets, welfare, etc., should be situated in cities. On the other hand, counties were looked upon as governments that would provide services, far fewer services, for people living in rural areas. The idea, therefore, of the court, or what the court set forth many, many years ago, was a notion that whenever portions of a county adjoining a city become more urbanized, then there was every rationale for the city to take over that portion of the urbanized portion of the county.
In the late 1950s and early 60s, annexing just a small portion of a neighboring county became a thing of the past. In order to meet the needs of their growing populations, cities and counties throughout Virginia began to merge entirely.
When I first went to work for the Times-Dispatch in 1953, there were 100 counties in Virginia. It had been that way for many, many years. But in the 60s, there was a consolidation trend. Down in Tidewater, Elizabeth City County consolidated with the city of Hampton. Warwick County and Newport News consolidated to form the city of Newport News. Across the bay, the city of Virginia Beach and Princess Anne consolidated. And that was a trend that seemed to be far more attractive to people than the old traditional solution of annexation, which was a legal battle as a rule. We had not only these very dramatic changes that were occurring in, say, the population growth patterns, the suburbanization of the country. We had the school desegregation case that was presenting new challenges to localities throughout the South. These were very important stories, some of the most important events in the history of the country.
Certainly there were many things going on a national level and international level that did impact our citizens. But you have to remember, most everything that citizens are extremely concerned about in base, everyone in the community, is local.
In 1959, local business owners in the City of Richmond reacted to the statewide trend and jump-started the process toward a consolidation agreement with Henrico County.
On the Richmond's First Club, the Richmond Civic Association, and some other business groups provided funding to the Public Administration Service, a very prestigious public policy group, to provide a plan for the merger of the County of Henrico and the City of Richmond. They recommended the merger because they felt that if the two jurisdictions were merged together, services would be more efficient, challenges could be overcome. Furthermore, much behind it was the idea that if you had one bigger city, one big Richmond, that this would kind of put the area on the map and stimulate economic growth.
In an attempt to reach a mutual agreement, each locality appointed 3 negotiators to represent its interests. Once a plan was agreed upon, the citizens of both Richmond and Henrico were asked to approve the merger in a vote, held on December 12, 1961.
They made a plan and submitted it, and nobody was happy with the plan. County wasn't, city wasn't.
It was much animosity in both directions, and people felt very strongly about it. You either were for the merger strongly, or you were against the merger even stronger.
The thing that really sticks out is how the issue of merger really divided families. So here is where politics really came up close with regards to families, because you had members of the same family either for merger or against merger. And there's some lingering out there even today of the bitter feelings that this created.
When the consolidation issue was put to a vote, as it had to be, the county of Henrico rejected it. So consolidation was out as far as the metropolitan Richmond area was concerned as a way to solve their problems. That left only one remedy for the city, and that was the old traditional solution of annexation.
On December 27, 1961, just 2 weeks after the merger failed at the polls, Richmond City Council filed suit to annex 142 square miles of Henrico County.
Annexation in Virginia has to be done through the judicial process. So the Richmond City Council asked for a 3-judge circuit court to be set up to look at annexation vis-a-vis Henrico County.
I remember covering the case. A fellow reporter who was there quite a bit also on it, Earl Dunford, who was another reporter for the Times-Dispatch. We've commented on this. There was no great sense of hostility in the proceedings between the county and the city on this. Annexation had always been a well-established method for cities to expand their boundaries. I didn't sense any sense of bitterness or hostility between the two groups.
Most of us were professionals, but it was very heated. We were cordial to each other, but there was no chit-chat between us.
My husband, Gowan Harwood, was one of the 3 county negotiators. There were 3 negotiators from the county and 3 negotiators from the city. All, in my opinion, were outstanding gentlemen who had the good of the community at their hearts.
Mr. Beck, the county manager at that point in time, members of the Board of Supervisors, some in favor, some not in favor, but they had very lively discussions on what this would mean to the future of Henrico County. And I think it was through that explanation, through that information, that people really began to see that if they wanted to control their destiny, if they wanted the types of services and the types of government that they were used to, then that annexation had to be defeated.
There were meetings held in the schools, in the libraries. It was the talk of the community, of course. And there were lots of articles. The press covered it constantly. The phones never stopped ringing. And Alden Aero, who used to be a neighbor of ours with WRVA, was constantly over here trying to get a little feel for how the negotiations were going.
It would take more than 3 years for the Special Annexation Court to announce its decision. During those years, the fate of Henrico County's very existence rested squarely on the shoulders of County Manager Ed Beck.
Henrico vigorously fought this annexation attempt. And among the leaders who fought against it was a county manager, Ed Beck. He was of the opinion that the county was perhaps better administered than the city government of Richmond, that the citizens of Henrico County got more for their dollar than the citizens of Richmond. He saw no need for any kind of a merger, and he was a very potent force in Henrico at the time, a very well-respected manager.
Oh, Mr. Beck, he was tighter than Dick's hat band. I think we reused paper clips until they wore out. He watched every single penny that anyone spent, including himself. He too had the county of Henrico's good at heart. He was a wonderful leader.
The city filed for 142 square miles. We only have 244 square miles. They wanted 6% of the county. So the county manager, Mr. E.A. Beck, called the key officials and department heads in and basically said, here's your marching orders. No vacations, no sick leave. Folks, you don't leave this county for anything. And he said that's the way it is, because this is, either the county's going to be devastated with this annexation or we're going to win it. I want you in your office or I want you in court.
We put out an order that no one would have vacations or take your time off during this period of time. So Mac George, who is an awfully fine fellow down in Verona, he was the head of recreation, I think it was. And he came to me and he said, my family has gone on vacation down to my wife's sisters in Myrtle Beach for many years, and we have it planned for just at this time. I said, I'm sorry, Mac, but if we let you go, it's just going to be somebody else we'll have to worry about. And so his kid sent back the message, let me see that fellow. I won't punch him in the nose. During that time, when we finally got into annexation and had to go down and play hardball and start teaming up, we formed some teams within the county, and they worked their tails off trying to get things straight to fight.
So the annexation started, and we're really literally spending every day in court. We're doing estimates on what this is going to cost, the roads that we're going to lose, water and the sewer, schools, so forth. We're doing estimates, city staff people are doing estimates. So the two staffs are just working night and day to get the numbers into the court.
The annexation court consisted of the local county judge, the chief judge, in this case Judge Henning, and then the Supreme Court, I think it was the Supreme Court, would appoint two judges from other jurisdictions. And in this particular case, I think there was a judge from Halifax County down in south side of Virginia and a judge from Lee County out in southwest Virginia, so that they had no reason to favor one over the other. As is the case in most, if not all, governmental proceedings, about 80% of what goes on is very boring, and really, if you've missed it, you haven't missed a lot. But you never know. When you put it all together, it can be important. So we were there for the boring as well as the exciting stuff. My seat in the courtroom, we were elevated a little bit, not quite as high as the judges, but we were seated up there where we could see what they were doing behind their desks and all that kind of stuff. And I remember at a break listening to one city official talking to another, and he was referring to the judge from Lee County. And he said, I know that we made a very good point in this particular argument because I saw Judge so-and-so from Lee County up there, boy, he was really writing and taking notes. Well, I could see what the judge from Lee County was doing. He was doodling. He was not taking notes. He was drawing little pictures. And I guess he was bored, but I mean, he was not taking notes. And that sort of thing. So even for the judges, there were boring moments.
Finally, on April 27, 1964, the court ruled in favor of the City of Richmond, but only awarded them 17 of the 142 square miles that they had requested.
The court finally gets to where they're awarding the city, instead of 142 square miles, which they wanted, the court awarded them 17 square miles, but they also gave them a bill of $55 million. What they did, the court gave them Willow Lawn Shopping Center, which at that time was about probably half the size of what Willow Lawn is today. And then Reynolds Metal headquarters out at Broad at 64 was in the annexation, which is what most people know today as Philip Morris. And then if you move around the East End, they got the Eastgate Mall, or what's now called Fairfield Commons. What they really got is they got the heart of the county.
In 1965, a majority of the city council decided to decline the award. Henrico political leadership was elated because now they could move ahead with their own development over the next 30 or 40 years without any threat of any further annexation or consolidation. In retrospect, it appears among the political leadership of the metropolitan area that I've conversed with over the years that that was perhaps the worst decision that the Richmond City Council ever made.
The city analyzed it and decided, no, it's too much. We're only getting 17 square miles, $55 million bill, and they rejected it. One of the biggest mistakes the city has ever made.
When that decision was made, to me, an unfortunate decision for the City of Richmond because it did lose what would be a very, very viable tax base, but a very, very good decision for Henrico County.
In the years that followed, Henrico County was eventually granted immunity from the threat of annexation and consolidation, a law that is still on the books today.
Today, it would not be possible for the City of Richmond to annex all or a portion of Henrico County. And the reason is that in 1981, the Circuit Court of the county entered a court order that granted Henrico complete immunity from city-initiated annexation. Back in 1979, the General Assembly passed a law that said a county could seek such immunity from the court if it could meet certain criteria. Once that criteria was met and demonstrated to the court, Judge Ballard Baker, in March of 1981, entered the order that granted the immunity that still exists today. The General Assembly, in its wisdom, has passed a law, still on the books today, that clearly states that the duration of immunity shall remain once a county has that immunity. So today, in sum, citizens do not have to fear the annexation wars that some of their ancestors experienced.
The impact of annexation, the decision of annexation not occurring, was a critical turning point in Henrico County. Because in essence it said Henrico is on its own. We are not going to become a part of another entity. Had it gone the other way, I don't know where we would be in Henrico County because we would be very, very different, quite frankly. If it were consolidation, totally different. Through annexation, obviously it was 17 square miles, but it was a huge portion of our tax base. But that decision alone made a critical difference. It made us what we are. It made us know and believe and act as if we were independent and we were qualified. And to this day, the citizens have reacted to that in a very, very positive way.